Welcome back to Belmont Bunch, and yes, there is still hockey content. We're going to do a fun little experiment here, a fun little thought experiment of who would win the Stanley Cup if the season ended today, which it looks like it might have, and we went on point percentage because teams played different amounts of games. So I think this would be the most likely way if the NHL had a playoff, in the future that was still this year. They wouldn't be able to play games at the end of the year to catch teams up. I think they'd have to go based off tiebreakers and point percentage. So even if there's a team currently outside the playoffs, let's use the Islanders in this case, get in conveniently because they had 2 games in hand on Carolina, and their point percentage was better. The Islanders only trailing Carolina by 1 point. Not Carolina, sorry, Columbus. Columbus, much different. Carolina still gets in no matter what. Columbus, because of point percentage, the Islanders have a better point percentage for the amount of games they played. And I know that's really unfair, but it helps the Islanders, so that's the way I went. No, that's not the reason I did it. That's just what people have been talking about within hockey circles. But anyway, let's get going on who would win the Stanley Cup if the season ended and then we went straight in the playoffs. James, we're going to open. You don't have to throw me one yet, but we're going to open with, we'll create some intrigue. We'll start with Philly and Pittsburgh. Obviously, fantastic. Amazing rivalry. I would love to see this as a playoff series. If we get deprived of this, I'll be pretty sad. Philly, extremely hot team. Pittsburgh, extremely disciplined, well-coached, got star power. The goaltending's been a little bit in flux recently. Philly, Carter Hart's been fantastic. I think we're going to give this one to Philly. Pass me that red, and we're going to pretend it's orange because the orange isn't as good. So we're going to give Philly this series in, we'll call it 6 games. Pittsburgh is a resilient team, and they will defend their honor. And I made that as uncomfortably close as I could. It's like that, what's it called, sketch from John Mulaney. You think you know where you're drawing a happy birthday card, and you're like, oh no, I'm near the end, and I'm not near the end of the word. Anyway, so Washington and Carolina, rematch from last year. Carolina, who upset Washington last year, and you might think Washington revenge series. Carolina not really playing well right now. Neither team playing especially great. I think this is a tough one because neither team's super hot. Carolina last year came in on a run and took them out, went all the way to the conference finals. This is a 7-game series. I'm gonna go with Washington. Really close series. Carolina plays Washington pretty well, as we saw last year. And I think Washington, more of the revenge story. And I think in the playoffs, it helps having 2 goalies as an option. He just made a nice catch off screen. They could go to Samsonov if Holtby struggles. They're still a really good team. They've struggled of late, but but they have been known as a bad playoff team, and they're turning it around more recently with their reputation. Tampa Bay, Toronto. Throw me that black.
Not much discussion.
I'm not going to be mean about it. No, Toronto, obviously it hasn't been the year, like the banner year that I think you would have thought in the offseason. But Tampa Bay, even though these teams wear the same colors, I wanted to use Tampa Bay's old black palette to differentiate them. Tampa Bay, second best team in hockey right now. In the standings. They've hit a bit of a skid recently. I don't think after going out the way they did last year, I think this year they learned to pace themselves a little bit, which is why they struggled early, but they've been turning it on. And I think Frederik Andersen probably a little bit tired. The Toronto defense could get thrashed in a potential series against Tampa, and Tampa's defense is good enough to hold Toronto. So Without further ado, the New York Islanders against Boston. Throw me that brown. That is blue.
Whoops, sorry.
We're gonna give Boston the series against the Islanders. Oh, sorry. Throw me the black real quick. I didn't say how many games for the Tampa series. I'm gonna say Tampa in 6. You might notice I don't like predicting short series because I really do think that in the playoffs there's a lot of battles. There's not a lot of sweeps. Anyway, Boston and the Islanders. Speaking of battles, not much of one. No, you might think that, but the Islanders actually played Boston pretty well this year outside of the last game that they played. So I'm going to say the Islanders in this situation have time to recollect themselves. They get Cizikas back in this timeline. They get Boychuk. They're healthy, and we're still going to give it to Boston, of course, because Boston is stellar. But it's between 5 or 6 games. Give it 6 to be nice to boys. Potential to be 5. All right.
You want to put a 5?
No. All right. Should we go to the West and do their first round, or should we continue this?
The West.
All right, let's do the West. All right, St. Louis, best team in the West, facing off against Nashville, who gets in on a tiebreaker for regulation wins over Vancouver and Minnesota, which is a real shame. I'd love to see Minnesota in there. But throw me that blue, baby. Nashville, not really much of a powerhouse this year. Been really up and down.
They've been really good against the Islanders.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If they play the Islanders, it's a 3-game sweep. Why did this all of a sudden? But anyway, the Blues just have a very complete team. And in this scenario...
I made a really bad catch off camera.
And in this scenario, St. Louis would have time to get Tarasenko back, which is a big plus. And Nashville, the goaltending situation's a little bit... I know Saros has been pretty good recently. But anyway, moving on. Colorado-Dallas, one of my favorite series because you got fantastic offense against really good defensive goaltending. And in this scenario, Dallas last year was a real surprise team in that they had some upsets. They almost got past the Blues. This is a really tough one. Oh, sorry. Pass me the blue for St. Louis. I keep forgetting the games. Okay, call this one in 5. The shortest series so far, outside of the Islander one, which is really 5, but I'm being nice. We're going to go with Dallas in 7. No, we're not. We're going to go with Colorado in 7. Almost hit the camera. Let's go. So I just remembered my own thesis for this, which is this is happening a few months from now. And in that time, I was thinking there's a lot of injuries for Colorado. A lot of those injuries could be remedied by that point. McKinnon would be able to play in that potential series. They might have might have Kadri back. And at full strength, Colorado and Dallas, I think there's an edge to Colorado. All right. And Vegas and Winnipeg, rematch of the first round rematch of the conference finals 2 years ago. Winnipeg, I got Vegas. The boring thing about this is I have not picked a single upset so far. So that's probably not great, because I'm sure there would be an upset. There is every year. Damn it.
Maybe it will be the Islanders.
Anyway, Edmonton, Calgary. The series I will be the most disappointed if I say everything like I'm having a stroke. I'd be most disappointed in this series not happening if the playoffs don't happen. I am gonna give this one. Such a great rivalry, such a fun series this could be, and I'm gonna give it to Edmonton. So we're gonna complete the first round. All of the upper seeds winning, which is annoying. I usually pick pretty out there brackets. But I'm sure not having the last 20 games of the season, kind of makes it tough. So let's go back to the East. We got Washington and Philly. You can throw me the red because they're both in red. Philly, hottest team in the league. I know in this scenario they would have lost a lot of lost some of the momentum based on not having played for 2 months and then going straight to the playoffs. But Philly seems to have turned a corner, and Carter Hart's been incredible, and they got the goal scoring going, and they're kind of like they're doing it for Oscar Lindblom, and it feels like a Cinderella story for Philly. Haha, Rocky reference or whatever. Boston and Tampa, really powerhouse series, top 2 teams in the league right now, and Tampa coming off an incredible embarrassment last year, and this is tough, but I'm another not an embarrassment, but give me that Brown. I'm sorry, Tampa. It's not embarrassing this time around because you're losing to the best team in the league, but Boston they're really solid.
How many games?
Oh yeah, we'll say this one Boston in this feels like a 7, and then
to Washington. Philly.
Nice. We'll say 6. All right.
Reasonable.
Pew! And that's what my downfall would be because reasonable brackets don't do well. All right. Let's go over to the West. St. Louis and Colorado. Great. This would be a really fun series to watch. You get a lot of star power. You get really good goaltending from unexpected places from Colorado. If it were Pavel Francouz, if Grubauer were still hurt in the scenario. So Colorado don't count them out in goal, even in the scenario that Grubauer doesn't play in the series. But it's really hard for me to go against St. Louis, and Jordan Binnington's an ice cube in the playoffs. And this would be a fantastic series, I think. St. Louis just has a very, very complete team, and we're going to give them this one. And this is, I think, the best 2 teams in the West left here. This side of the bracket's not as strong, so this is kind of like, a mini Western Conference Final. We'll give it to them in an epic 7-game series. All right. Hopefully not deprived of that. All right. Vegas and Edmonton. This could be a lot of fun because you have some recent playoff underachieving. Edmonton having not been there in a while and having blown the last series they played in the playoffs against Anaheim, and Vegas having blown it last year, leading 3-1 against the Sharks and then finding a way to lose that series. Pacioretty would be healthy in this scenario, and you have Fleury and Leonard in goal for Vegas, so you have 2 number 1s. Edmonton, Koskinen's been pretty good, but I don't know. It feels like a hard swing to Vegas for that. Scoring, I give to Vegas. McDavid's so good. Draisaitl is so good. I think there's more depth with Vegas, and I'm going to go with Vegas. So Vegas, in this scenario, and I know I said scenario earlier, I'm going to say them interchangeably. This is a little bit sad to put it in 5, but Vegas, just so much depth if they're healthy. All right, go back to the East for a sec. Philly, Boston. Oh, this would be so much fun. And they just played in the series in a game the other day, right before the end of the season, potentially. And Boston, it felt like a playoff game. And I said to my brother, this could be the Eastern Conference Final if we, have a season. And in my scenario, it is. But this sucks. We're going to go with Boston. We're going to say Boston looked very good against Philly the other day, and they neutralized Philly's offense completely. Tuukka Rask has been fantastic recently, and he's a good playoff goalie, and it hurts. I want to pick Philly in that series, but unfortunately I got the 1 seed all the way in the cup representing the East, because Boston, not known for titles. All right, in the West, St. Louis and Vegas. Really interesting series. You get last year's Western Conference champion against 2 years ago's Western Conference champion. And there's a lot of depth on both sides. And the goaltending's really good on both sides. It's really tough. But I'm going to go to the team that is more consistent. We'll be getting Vladimir Tarasenko back in the Blues. So you get a star back on top of being an incredible team without him. So I think that gives them a slight edge. St. Louis. And so, somewhat predictably, unfortunately, we have a rematch of last year's Stanley Cup final. Doesn't happen too often to have rematches of the Stanley Cup final back to back, and so Boston and St. Louis, but they've earned it. They're the number one seeds in each conference. So really boring bracket, but no, it's not. Content is fun. I picked one upset, and you could argue that's not much of an upset. This doesn't feel like an upset year. It felt like the middle of the road, the lower playoff seeds this year were not as dangerous as they were last year. But, you know, they could have gotten hot in that last 15-game stretch. It's unfortunate, but, you know, we're going with the scenario, potato, potato, tomato, tomato. We're going with the scenario that, you know, the season ends today and then they just pick up the playoffs. So, in the Stanley Cup final rematch, pass me both, sir.
Dun.
Damn it. We got the Bruins against the Blues. And I know who's going to win. I've actually had this prepared in my head. So, past the age of 23 and contractually obligated to go every time I bend down. And I'm not past 23, so I don't know why I did it. So, the Bruins win it. They get revenge. They have a very, very consistent team that is very, very well coached and has just revenge on its mind. And also, the Blues have been very good. This would be a great series. We'll call it 7 again, just like last year. But Boston, on a mission, have overcome, not really overcome much this year. Thanks. They've just been so consistent. And St. Louis has too, but it's just, I think in hockey, it's really, really difficult to beat a team in 2 consecutive series. Even though this is a special scenario, they're in different conferences and it's meeting twice in a row in the Cup, but there's something about this Boston team. Everything, they've just been so consistent, so well coached, and just sneaking by the Blues this time around. So that is the Stanley Cup in my head. We'll see what happens, and let me know below what you would have picked, because I love alternate history. It's wonderful. But that's it for the video. Like and subscribe. Keep watching, please. No.
Don't leave.
But don't leave. We have stuff coming still. So yeah. Wash your hands and have a good one. What are you doing?
Walk off the screen.
Okay. Why? What?